Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a shocking and controversial story emerging from the front lines of the Russia-Ukraine war. Reports that Russian President Vladimir Putin has effectively abandoned his own troops, leaving thousands stranded and dying in Ukraine's kill zones. This story has sent shockwaves through Russia's military ranks and is raising serious questions about the future of the war and Putin's control over his forces. Over the last several weeks, the situation on the ground in eastern and southern Ukraine has changed dramatically. Ukrainian forces, boosted by new Western weapons and advanced drone technology, have launched precision strikes deep into Russian positions. But what's truly alarming is the growing number of reports from Russian soldiers themselves, saying they were ordered to hold impossible positions, often with no reinforcements, no food, and no ammunition. They've described being abandoned by their commanders and left to die as Ukrainian forces close in. Russian military bloggers, once fiercely loyal to the Kremlin, are now publicly criticizing the top brass. They claim entire units have been cut off and sacrificed in places like Avdiivka, Bakhmut, and the Zaporizhzhia front. Videos are surfacing of desperate Russian soldiers calling home, pleading for help, saying that no one is coming for them. Some are even surrendering to Ukrainian forces rather than face certain death. Inside Russia, morale among troops is collapsing. Families are furious. Mothers and wives of soldiers are flooding social media with messages demanding answers from the defense ministry. Many say their sons were sent to the front with little training and were promised rotations that never came. Now, they're learning through Telegram channels that their loved ones have been killed or captured, and the government is silent. This situation has become one of the darkest moments of the war for Russia. Putin's strategy, once built on propaganda and control, seems to be crumbling under the weight of reality. Reports indicate that Russian command centers are prioritizing political optics over real military strategy. Commanders are allegedly told to hold positions at any cost, even when tactical withdrawal could save lives. That phrase, "at any cost," has become symbolic of the human suffering within the Russian army today. Military analysts believe Putin is deliberately hiding the true scale of Russian casualties. Some estimates suggest that tens of thousands of Russian troops have been killed or wounded since the start of 2025 alone. Entire battalions have reportedly been wiped out in single engagements because they were left without air support or artillery backup. Ukraine's expanding network of drones, precision missiles, and intelligence from Western allies has turned Russian supply routes into death traps. In some areas, Ukrainian drones have been able to track Russian movements in real time, directing artillery strikes that devastate entire columns. Meanwhile, many Russian soldiers have complained that their own drones are outdated and communication lines are unreliable. This technological gap has left Russian forces blind and exposed, trapped in zones that Ukrainian commanders now call the meat grinder. Behind the scenes, there are growing tensions between the Kremlin and the military leadership. Defense Minister Andriy Belousov and senior generals are reportedly clashing over strategy and resources. Some insiders say Putin no longer fully trusts his own generals, while the generals themselves are frustrated that political decisions are costing soldiers' lives. The result is chaos, a fractured command chain that leaves troops directionless and demoralized. On Russian social media, more videos are emerging of soldiers accusing their superiors of corruption and incompetence. They say supplies meant for the front are being sold on the black market. Food and medical aid often never reach those who need it. Some soldiers have shared footage of themselves digging trenches with their bare hands, wearing civilian clothing, and using outdated Soviet-era rifles. For many, it feels like they've been sent to die, not to fight. Ukraine, meanwhile, is taking advantage of this collapse in Russian morale. Ukrainian commanders are deliberately targeting isolated Russian units, surrounding them and offering chances to surrender. Many of these captured soldiers have told Ukrainian and Western journalists that they were abandoned by Moscow. Some even say their officers fled first, leaving the rank and file behind. This has become one of the most demoralizing patterns of the war, the feeling that the Kremlin no longer values its soldiers' lives. Internationally, this revelation is damaging Putin's image even further. For years, he cultivated the persona of a strong, loyal leader who valued Russia's military might. But now, even within Russia, that image is cracking. Families are asking why their sons are dying for a war that no longer seems to have clear goals. Critics say Putin is obsessed with not appearing weak, even if it means sacrificing thousands of men for symbolic victories that mean nothing on the ground. Western intelligence reports indicate that Russian losses have reached unsustainable levels. Desertion is rising, and morale is at its lowest since the invasion began. Some reports claim entire units are refusing orders or sabotaging their own equipment to avoid being sent to the front. Others are simply vanishing, going missing in the chaos of retreat. It's a level of disarray that even Putin's tight grip on information cannot fully hide. In response, the Kremlin has intensified propaganda efforts, portraying these abandoned soldiers as heroes who stood their ground against NATO-backed forces. But the truth spreading through social media tells a different story. The Russian public is increasingly skeptical of state TV narratives. Telegram, YouTube, and independent journalists are exposing the horrors, the mass graves, the endless convoys of coffins, and the broken promises to families. Even loyal pro-Kremlin voices are struggling to defend what's happening. Prominent war correspondents have begun questioning the leadership's decisions. They're warning that the situation could spiral into a full-blown mutiny if Moscow doesn't change course. Some even fear that what happened with the Wagner Group's rebellion in 2023 could repeat itself, but this time with active duty soldiers instead of mercenaries. As the pressure mounts, Putin is said to be doubling down on control. Intelligence reports suggest he's purging officers who question his orders, replacing them with loyalists rather than competent commanders. This only worsens the problem on the battlefield. Experienced officers are being sidelined or imprisoned, while political appointees with little tactical skill take charge. The result is more chaos, more casualties, and more abandoned troops. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has used this situation to his advantage. He recently stated that Russia is fighting itself, and that Putin has turned his army into a graveyard of his own ambitions. It's a brutal assessment, but one that resonates with what many Russians are beginning to see. The Kremlin's obsession with avoiding defeat is destroying its own military from within. Meanwhile, satellite imagery has revealed the extent of Russian losses in key areas. Fields littered with burned-out tanks, abandoned trenches, and destroyed supply depots stretch for miles. It's a haunting picture, one that underscores how isolated many of these troops truly are. They are not being reinforced. They are not being rescued. They are simply left behind. The psychological toll is immense. Some captured Russian soldiers have admitted they no longer believe in the war. They say they were told Ukraine would fall in weeks, not years. Now, after months of hunger, cold, and fear, they feel betrayed by their leaders. Many have said openly that they were sent to die for nothing. This disillusionment is spreading rapidly through the ranks, threatening to erode the very foundation of Putin's war machine. Inside Moscow, rumors are growing about divisions within the Kremlin. Some insiders reportedly believe Putin has lost touch with reality, surrounded by advisors who tell him only what he wants to hear. Others think he's deliberately prolonging the war to avoid political collapse at home. Either way, the result is the same: a grinding, endless conflict where ordinary soldiers pay the price. What's particularly tragic is that many of these troops are conscripts, young men barely out of their teens. They were drafted under new mobilization laws and sent to the front with little choice. Their training was minimal, their equipment outdated, and their missions unclear. Now they're trapped in deadly zones with no path out. The phrase "left to die" is not an exaggeration, it's the grim reality for thousands. Even Russian paramedics and medics on the front lines are overwhelmed. Reports describe field hospitals running out of bandages, morphine, and even food. Injured soldiers are sometimes left for days before evacuation. The chain of support that every army depends on is breaking down under the weight of corruption, fear, and neglect. The international community is watching closely. Western nations are using this moment to tighten sanctions and ramp up support for Ukraine, sensing that Russia's military position is weakening. NATO intelligence suggests that Russian defenses are hollowed out, relying on fear and propaganda rather than coordination and morale. This, they say, could be the beginning of the end for Putin's war effort. But despite the chaos, Putin continues to project confidence. In public speeches, he insists that Russia will prevail and that its special military operation is achieving success. Yet behind the rhetoric, the truth is clear: Russia's army is bleeding out, and its leader seems unwilling to acknowledge it. Every abandoned soldier, every lost battalion, every destroyed convoy adds to the growing shadow over the Kremlin. As winter approaches, the situation could become even worse. Harsh weather will make supply routes more difficult, and soldiers left in exposed positions will face freezing conditions with little shelter. Without proper reinforcements, these abandoned units could face mass casualties on a scale not seen since the early months of the invasion. For the families waiting back home, the pain is unimaginable. Many are still waiting for news that never comes. Some receive vague letters saying their loved ones are missing in action. Others get official notices with no explanation, no body, and no answers. The sense of betrayal is turning personal. It's no longer about politics, but about human loss. In the end, this story is not just about military strategy. It's about the human cost of blind loyalty, pride, and political deception. Putin's decision to abandon his troops reflects a deeper rot within his regime, one where power and image matter more than lives. And as the world watches, Russia's soldiers are paying the ultimate price for their leader's obsession with domination. The tragedy unfolding on the Ukrainian front lines is a warning to all who follow authoritarian leaders without question. When power becomes absolute, compassion disappears. When propaganda replaces truth, lives are lost for lies. The voices of those soldiers, their desperate calls, their final messages are echoes of a war that should never have happened. And as the war grinds on, one question remains: how long can Putin sustain a war that his own army no longer believes in? The answer may define not just the future of Russia and Ukraine, but the stability of the entire world. Because every day this war continues, more soldiers are left behind, more families are broken, and more truth is buried beneath the fog of propaganda. But the world is watching. The truth, as painful as it is, cannot be hidden forever. And that truth is this: Putin has abandoned his own men, and history will never forget it.